such a warm introduction. It's truly reassuring to see that absence makes the heart grow fonder. Well, I should start by saying that I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and I would like to give heartfelt thanks to Messrs. Hargreaves and Ahmed, the most unlikely of bedfellows, who have consistently and persistently over the last few months encouraged those of us who don't live quite so close to make the effort to come tonight, and it has really been worth every penny of the trip. A rather expensive trip. So Matt asked me to speak for a few minutes this evening. I really don't want to dwell on myself, so I'll give you the 60-second synopsis of what I've been up to for the last 23 years, and then I will talk about more interesting matters, I hope. So after school, as Ben said, I studied in Beijing, and in Asia it's kosher. So I lived 3 years in London, 12 years in Tokyo, and 3 years in Hong Kong. Ben said that I dance flamenco. That's not quite right. I married a flamenco dancer. Things get lost in translation, obviously. And my wife and I, we've been married for almost 11 years. We have 3 lovely children, aged 8, 6, and 4. My children are called Annabelle, Ariane, and Alexander, and as Bobby Aurora pointed out to me, mate, now you've got the 3 A's that you didn't get in your A-levels. That wasn't quite the intention, but that's later. Some of you will remember me for having been fairly academic at school. Some of you will remember me for having been called the T-Fal Slaphead, second only to Mr. Grayson. And some of you will remember me for having been nicknamed Gary Wilmot, a rather illiterate comedian who was international for a short time. Well, fortunately in Asia, no one's ever heard of the T-Fal Slaphead. No one's ever heard of Gary Wilmot. But they have heard of Barack Obama. And so in that sense, over the last few years, I can genuinely say that life has treated me kindly. And I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to the teaching staff of William Hughes for making me aspire to such heady heights as president. Yeah. On a slightly more serious note, one thing that I would like to say here is, you know, maybe for the people who live in Manchester and see their friends every day, I'm going to be stating the obvious, but being based in Asia as I am, you know, we do have a small contingent of old Humans in Asia. Tim Jones and Matt Gray in Singapore, Ben in Australia, Anthony Fujumi, Phil Sheriff, also in Australia. And, you know, I would say that the very best friendships that I've ever made were made at William Hughes. And there are a number of people who I've met along the way in Asia, and when I talk to them about their lives and ask them who their friends are, there are so few of them that talk about their friends from school, which, you know, on the one hand is sad, on the other hand is quite shocking. And I think it's a genuinely distinguishing characteristic of William Hughes that we are such a tight community, and I actually think that's part of the reason why so many people have come together tonight. And I hope that that friendship is something that none of us ever lose. Silence in the back. Silence. Gracie, Houghton, separate those desks. Now, Mr. Hargreaves had suggested to me that I should recount some of my memories from school, which obviously I'm delighted to do. Of course, the risk of doing that is that memories are incredibly personal, so I'm going to beg your indulgence for a couple of minutes before I get on to more interesting topics, where I will be reading out, if I can log into my iPhone in my inebriated state, I will read out some messages from some old Humans who find themselves in the other parts of the world. So, in no particular order, first of all, I was in 1A, and there were a number of people... first person to get a Wednesday detention in 1A was Jimmy Bella. Silence. Now, the reason why he got a Wednesday detention is because he wrote Toddy on his history exercise book. Our teacher at the time was Toddy Haynes. And of course, Toddy Haynes was having none of his impertinence. It was clearly the start of a slippery slope for Mr. Bellas. So I would like to take this opportunity to toast Mr. Haynes. To Mr. Haynes.
Toddy!
The second memory I have is of a couple of rather obscure characters now here. Just saying the names makes me smirk. Mike Bird and Richard Leonard. Now they were in Warren Jackson's Latin class, and it felt like an entire term. It may have only been a couple of lessons, but the two of them decided to hide in the cupboards for the entire lesson. Completely unbeknownst to Mr. Jackson. And as he was going through the set text with us, they'd be punctuated by this bleating sound emanating from the cupboards. So all we would hear was beep, beep. That was Mr. Bird and Mr. Ledger. And after a short while, they emerged from the cupboards, much to Mr. Jackson's surprise, and he asked who they were and if they were in his class. And they said, they announced their names, and they said they were in his class, and Mr. Jackson said, "Do you want to be taught? Are you happy to be here?" And they said, "No." "Can we leave, sir?" And they left, and I don't think anyone's heard from them ever since. Okay. And the next story. Here we go. So, I think this was back in, it was either 1987 or 1988, so it was just at the time that William Humes had decided to admit girls into the school. I was studying German with Mr. Turner, and he decided to conduct a mini referendum of the students in his class to ask the question, was it right to admit girls to the school? Not of course, that our decision was going to influence the outcome. And I was rather, as I said, I was quite academic, I was also incredibly uptight. And so I said, in a rather uptight way, no, it's wrong to admit girls because they put you off. Clearly I was flawed at the time, but anyway. And there was a precocious individual in our class called Christopher Whitebot. And he turned around and said, "Sir, they don't put you off, they turn you on." And I thought, you're really cool. I'm so behind mine. And so, I say with humble heart now, he was right, and it probably was a good decision. And the last memory that I have is, and this is very personal actually. As some of you may remember, in the upper sixth, so this was in 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. And for my 18th birthday present, my parents gave me the money to go to Berlin to see the wall come down, again with Chris Whitebot. And I remember going to, perfect time. I remember going to Mr. Briggs and asking for permission to take, it was either the Friday or the Monday off. And Mr. Briggs at the start, he said no. And understandably so, as Mr. Shaw has since reminded me. And regardless, Chris and I decided to go, and we ended up, in the name of William Humes, conducting an interview for Channel 4 in a rather inebriated state with some of the German people in East Berlin. And of course, when we came back to school, we were then praised for our initiative. And that was probably the first time that I learned A, the meaning of paradox, and B, I understood what calculated risk-taking was, which has stood me in very good stead since then. So I've rambled enough, and as promised, I did want to read out a couple of messages from some of our friends. So if you can just bear with me, I will go through, I've got 3 messages to read out from old Humeans from our year who now live in Singapore and Australia. So the first is from Mr. Tim Jones. Tim Jones is one of my very best friends. I was best man at his wedding. Yes, he did get married. And he has said the following. Well then, so many William Hume old boys and a couple of girls in the room tonight. Sending a big shout out from Singapore. Iain Drayton is not the only one that has landed in the Far East. Benny Savage, Anthony Fajumi and Phil Shezza have all emigrated to Australia. Surprisingly, it appears that the transportation of convicts is still thriving business in the 21st century. Matt Gray and I are in Singapore, the former a respectable teacher, and the latter a reprehensible drunkard, as I hope many of you are at the end of the evening. So 30 years, and Iain asked for one of my fading memories of William Hume. Deputy Headmaster Loveland gave the speech the first month of school. Gentlemen, there are 2 things I hate in my school, the thief and the banner. I thought that was a brave statement, considering some of the 11-year-old Mancunian lads in the school assembly. I looked around and it was more like a lineup for the casting of the Dirty Dozen than a grammar school. However, the words from the man resonated, and I think a relatively honest and vandalous bunch of men emerged from 7 years of schooling at William Hume's. Of course, with the exception of those bankers in our midst. That's my memory, what is left of it. Please have a great night, be safe, and please do remember, if you drink, don't drive, don't even pot. The next is from Matthew Gray. So Matthew said, I would appreciate if you could pass on the following message to Matty Hargreaves. You've not lost that rapier-like wit. Well done on arranging what I know will be a great event. I'm so sorry I can't be there. And if he's there, a message to Mr. Shaw. Dear Mr. Shaw, you might not remember me, but I just want you to know that you helped me through a very difficult time during my time in the lower sixth by inspiring me with your story about your mate at uni. Dave? Tony? I can't remember. But I do remember you telling me that the fella in question faced a tough decision in his life, choose between going down the pub for another cheese sandwich and a pint, or knuckle down to some serious studying. It had a great impact on me. To this day, I still enjoy a cheese sandwich. But I did get a degree, so your story must have had the intended effect. Thanks for telling me what I needed to hear in a way that allowed me to work things out for myself. I'm a teacher these days, and if I manage to help anyone in the way you helped me that day, it will all have been worthwhile. Cheers, Matt Wright. And then finally from Mr. Sheriff. I reckon the only serious thing I would say is that teachers have the ability to turn someone's life around and be absolutely inspirational. I reckon anyone who has ever achieved anything half decent had at least one teacher to thank for that. Mine was Dr. Barker, a nails physics teacher who had faith and determination. He was the only person who thought I had a hope of getting into Oxford and made me realise that I could. So I've got a lot to thank him for. If you see him, you can pass that on. Ta. It's an absolute privilege to have been here this evening with you and to have been asked to speak. It's comforting to see that so many of us have become caricatures of our former selves. And with that, I would like to end with a toast to Humeans past, present and future. May the friendships and the legacy endure.